My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Have you ever thought about friends and friendship and what makes for a really good friend? Well, there's different qualities, but I think the most important quality of a true friend is their fidelity or faithfulness. A really true friend is one who is with you through the good and the bad. The opposite, in a sense, to a good friend, a really true friend, is a fair weather friend. Those who are friends just when the going is good. You look at literature. You look at Sam Gamgee and Frodo, famous friends of the Lord of the Rings. Sam Gamgee is actually, he's Frodo's gardener at the beginning, and he agrees to go on that great adventure with his master, Frodo. But more than a servant or a gardener, he's really, and he turns out to be Frodo's best friend. One of the key moments that reveals this is the moment when he says to Frodo, who's really can't go any further. He's at the end of his wits and at the end of his strength, and Sam Gamgee says to him, "Come, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry it for you," meaning the ring, "but I can carry you and it as well." It's a wonderful portrayal of a friendship by Tolkien of Sam, who's a humble guy, and not the hero really of the book, but in a sense he really is the hero of the book. He is the one without whom it would have been impossible for Frodo to do what he was asked to do. There's other very famous examples like that. You think of Don Quixote and his Sancho Panza, his servant also, but really more than a servant, his great friend. Or the other great example, if you're into Shakespeare, is the fool in King Lear. King Lear, the poor, he's the real fool in a sense. King Lear, he makes lots of silly mistakes, but the fool sticks by him, and the fool helps him through his crisis. So there's some examples from literature of great friends. The great friends in those three cases are actually servants, but more than servants, they're friends. And this appears to be what Jesus is hinting at in today's gospel. Because when we look at the gospel in today's Mass, Jesus talks about a servant, a faithful servant. The servant who plows or minds the sheep, and then when the master comes home, the master will say to him, "Well, get my supper laid, make yourself tidy and wait on me," and so on and so on. The master treats the servant as a servant, and the servant knows that he is a servant. And at the end of the gospel passage, Jesus says, "So with you, when you've done all that you've been told to do, say, we are merely servants. We have done no more than our duty." But I think we should see that in terms of what we just seen with Frodo and Don Quixote and Sancho Panza and the fool in King Lear. They're servants, but much more than servants, they're real faithful friends. And that's the correct way, I think, to understand that you, Lord, want us to understand the gospel. Thinking of friendship, we could ask ourselves a little question, ask our Lord this question. Do I treasure my friends? My friends, it doesn't mean we have to have a whole lot of them. Certainly not all those Facebook friends. There might be people have 500, 600, 700 friends. While they're acquaintances, they're not really friends. We have a handful of friends. But do I really treasure them? Even the pagans, the pre-Christians, Aristotle and Cicero, two big names from the pagan past, even they realized how important friendship is. Aristotle, he said that even if you had everything else in the world, nobody would choose to live a life without friends. And Cicero, quite similar thing, he said that he thought that except for wisdom, there is not a greater gift that the immortal gods could give to men than friendship. So two really high estimations of friendship. But then also we look at the Old Testament, look at the book of Sirach, and it's got this beautiful lines about friendship and how much a treasure a true friend is. I'll read the lines, 3 lines. A faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. He that has found one has found a treasure. There's nothing so precious as a faithful friend, and no scales can measure his excellence. A faithful friend is an elixir of life, and those who fear the Lord will find him. So the faithful friend, a sturdy shelter, a treasure, nothing can be so precious as a faithful friend, an elixir of life even. So thinking of that, how am I, my turn, a friend to my friends? Am I a sturdy shelter, a faithful friend? Again, that wonderful quality of fidelity, faithfulness. I'm not a fair weather friend. A very important part of that is something, in fact, that Pope Francis has talked about. He's talked about maybe especially younger people, because the younger you are, maybe to a certain point, the more the phone and the screen looms large in your life. And he warns us about the risk of mediating our friends, our friendships, all through screens. And he says that we therefore don't run the risk of a face-to-face encounter. It's always a little bit more difficult. It's much easier to send a WhatsApp message or a text message than to actually meet someone, talk to them face-to-face, even if they're friends of ours, in fact. He goes on, he says it's difficult to encounter their physical presence, which challenges us with their pain and their pleas, with their joy, which infects us in our close and continuous interaction. So there we see, friendship isn't something that we can switch on and switch off. It suits me to talk to my friend now. It doesn't suit me this other time. I want the company of my friend now. I don't want the company of this friend this other time. That's not the way of a true friend. The true friend is like this servant. He's like the servant to his friends. He doesn't use them. They're not for his convenience. Rather, he sees, or we see ourselves, there for the convenience of our friend. In other words, to serve them. They aren't serving me. Now, the funny thing is, this also applies exactly as in that way to our friendship with Jesus. If I only pray or go to Mass when it suits me, when it doesn't require a sacrifice, well then, neither is my friendship with Jesus a real friendship. We have to make those sacrifices so there isn't just the fair weather friendship with Jesus either. And one way we do that is just by committing ourselves to meeting with our Lord, as it were. These 10 minutes of prayer each day is a way of doing that. And when you think about it, this is one of the ways that friendship happens. In fact, it's probably the most important way that friendship happens. You become a friend through repeated meetings, commitment to meeting a person, time and time again. To finish, I'll tell you a story. It's a true story from the United States of a guy who fell in love with a girl. Now, she lived in a different state from his, and so she lived miles away. So when she went back home, she went back to her different state. Now, he decided he was going to win her heart by sending her gifts. So every week, he would send her little parcels, sometimes big ones. And so the postman would ring the doorbell and say, well, parcel here for Katie, such and such. And then the next week would be, hello, Katie, there's another parcel for you. You're a very popular girl. And so, of course, he got to know her quite well. What do you think happened? Well, yes, you're right. Katie ended up marrying the postman. Why did that happen? Well, because they were meeting, at least weekly, this regular, constant meeting. They got to know each other and they got to fall in love. So the poor guy back in the other state sending all those gifts. So we finish up, and let's ask our Lord and ask Our Lady also, who must have been a great friend of her friends, to help me appreciate the value of friendship, to be a real faithful friend of my friends and a real faithful friend also of Jesus. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father, and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.